Okay guys, this is Cruise Roy again, just for a quickie on the 450, the FW450 V3 version 3. These are the quick release heads. You know me, I couldn't sleep unless I took this thing apart. I don't really have the time to do this, but the head's pretty simple. I mean, way simpler than most helis. But you got to remember, the FW450 is actually a low head speed helicopter. You don't hear this thing ripping like, you know, some of these guys on YouTube playing all the helicopters. I don't do 3D typically, but and it's cool that you can flip a switch and this thing can fly upside down. And like somebody says, you know, you can impress your friends, or you can, you know, cut their head off, whatever. But anyways, I pulled this thing apart. Let's start there. They have one of the hardest dampening systems on here. This is so hard and stiff. I can't even pull the second part off here by tugging on it. So that makes it fun to try to repair. But it is a heavy-duty dampening system. I guess that's taking the flex out of this head. Now, normally there would be thrust bearings in between a couple of bearings on the, we're going to call this the blade grip. I know it isn't because it's missing the blade grip, but it has a feathering shaft, as you can see right there. The screw had very limited, if you can see it, Loctite on it. You can always tell a feathering shaft, it's always going to break free on the weakest point. So this nut didn't come off, but this one did first. So weakest link on that part. Doesn't mean it's a bad thing. They did have at least Loctite on there. But I pulled it apart. We have one little bearing. Not a bearing. This is just a washer. And if I pulled out my micrometer, I think it's just a hair too big. This should be cut in half and have two separate ones, one on each side. So you have a dampener, you have the head, collar, whatever you want to call it. You have a very hard black dampener, feathering shaft coming through. Then you have a spacer. This is just a spacer washer. That's it. So you don't see any bumps on there, do you? Because, I mean, my eyes are getting old and I don't see the bumps. All right, and now I'm going to use the feathering shaft to just get this one bearing out. All right. Now, this is just your typical, I think that's a 5mm, 5 and 10. You know, this is a typical ball bearing. It's not a thrust bearing. It's just a typical throw it in on a shaft and make it spin bearing. Now, I'm spinning it right now. I'm not getting that funny feeling that I had with the head on. And if you look at this side, because it's loose, it's moving just fine. So I'm going with that spacer, which is normally a thrust bearing sometimes. It's usually two washers and a thrust bearing in the middle after the damper. But anyways, they're just using a simple way out here. They're putting a spacer there. I think the spacer is too big, Flywing. Because in the end, when you start putting the bearing on, and I'll put this down for a minute, and we'll talk about the blade grip part. It's all solid aluminum. There's no thrust bearings in here either. And on the other side, there's another one of those bearings, just like that. That's what I can see down the hole. But if you notice, there's a spring in there, which over time will probably soften, but not enough to cause any issue. And then you have these two dead man pins. I mean, the dead plow pins, I could punch one out and then punch the other out, get the spring out, and I could get that bearing out. So, wow. This is where it gets complex. You know, if this bearing goes in there, which because it's too tight on this head, and the rotation of the head going at high RPM, these bearings are whining in there, and if they can't move right, they're too tight, and they're bouncy, you're going to have issues. So, I mean, if you had to replace that bearing, and you can, all these helis, even though they're built with, that's probably, you know, 5 cents for that bearing. If you wanted a high-end bearing, you could probably purchase it. You can buy bearings anyway. You can buy ceramic bearings for this if you want. But the thing is, to get this one out, like I said, you got to cold punch these out. Both sides have them. That spring will fly out. and deep in there is a bearing. And I didn't notice that, you know, the end of the screw and the little washer. So that's your components. You have, I'm going to put them laid out here so you can see them. So you have a spacer, you have a feathering, the collar, the main head, you want to call it, feathering shaft. You have a washer that I think's too big. Flywing, cut that in half and separate both sides. That gap right there is too much. The simple reason is when I tighten this down, it's going to have that issue. But we're going to try. Maybe it's just a glitch. So you have the feathering shaft, you have a spacer washer, you have a regular standard ball bearing, no thrust bearings in this head, and then it goes through. I got to put it on the right way here. This one is... Alright, Rubik's Cube time, Rubik's Cube time. Alright, let me get this one in the right place before I go throwing that head on. Okay, there we go. And this one's going to go on this way. Okay, bearing went in kind of nice, you know what I mean? And if you look at it, I don't have that weird reaction right now. You know what I mean? It's nice and smooth the way it should be. I don't care who's out there, you're not going to tell me that click, 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 that's good for flying. Nope, 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 nope. Lie through your teeth. I'm not selling these to you, trust me. Alright, let me put the screw back in. And this is a trick in itself because of those little drop pins. They're right in the way of that washer. So I'm just saying, that's going to be a fun thing to do. And let me get it snug, because you can only go so far because the other side's going to start to spin. Now, you always need two of the same size. I'm going to come in here. I'm going to take this apart later and re-Loctite it. I'm just putting it together to show you. Now, you're going to bring it, now you can watch me turning it. This is too loose, too loose, too loose. Alright, I'm close. I'm just going to crank it once. That's it on these. But I need to put Loctite back on that. Don't forget Loctite. Use blue, don't use red. You'll never get this thing apart ever again. But anyways, let's go back to this. Let me put the heads on the line. Guess what? I'm right back to that clickety click. I'm feeling the balls in the bearing. See, it's just locked right here. And off and off. Like I said, I'm not here to sell you anything. I purchased this with my own money, but I think I'm just going to resell it. I might take these two spacers out and run them on a flat sander. I have this nice flat sander diamond, and I might run them on there for a little bit and try to get the same size, but those spacers are way too thick, so you get this clicking action. And this isn't going to end well with this thing flying multiple hours. And I just had to take it apart, guys. It's a good idea, but it's got some bugs to work out. Please don't be the one to test the bugs out. But anybody else tell me they don't have this, I got a defective one that has either the feathering shaft is too small, but this thing is actually locking in certain areas, which I thought in the beginning this almost ended up center stick, but now that I took the bearing out, I'm clicking over here on the high side and on right here. So you can't have your bearings that tight. I don't care what anybody says. Those bearings will get hot and they'll seize and they'll make weird noises, and then your rotor head will stop working and you're gonna end up on the ground. Alright, this is Cruise Roy. I'm going to bed. I hope this helps you out. Make your decision. I'm gonna look more into it. Maybe I can fix the head. Maybe Flywing will send me a couple of spacers. I know they won't send me a heli for free, but maybe they'll send a couple of washers that are the right millimeters to get rid of this high slop in here. Alright, it's Cruise Roy and I'm out of here.